Are we live? Yes.
Here we go. It looks like we're live. So welcome everyone to the Death Chick Show. I'm Misty Lynn, here with my wonderful co-host Patty Burgess. And we have a great show in store for you today. If you're tuning in for the first time, we are a forum for all things death, dying, grief, and loss. We interview experts in this field, and our goal is to have open conversations about this topic that is often feared. And we want to stop the tippy-toeing around it way. And our guest today has a wonderful, heart-touching story that brings home why we don't have to fear death. So I'm going to turn it over to Patty, and she'll be introducing our guest. Thanks for joining.
All right. Thanks, Misty. Yes, I am most excited about this guest because I first heard about Dave Kane listening to another podcast, and I was absolutely blown away by what this man has been through, what his family's been through, and the hope and the healing that is offered. So, you know, it's hard to believe that in the most tragic of circumstances that there can be hope and healing. And it's said that to lose a child is the most horrific of events. But I want to ask you, and we've also, I take not only this interview, but one we did a few weeks ago, if you remember, the couple who lost both of their children in from a drunk driving accident. And we kind of talked about the same thing with them, and that is, what if the parents, though they grieve mightily, come to understand that this event was to be, and that the massive impact on others by this particular child's death could have only happened this way? What if there were someone like that? Well, you're going to meet such a parent like that today, and that's Dave Kane. He's going to be talking to you about the loss of his son, Nicky O'Neill, who was just 18 years old and the youngest person to lose their life. I say this physical life in the Rhode Island station nightclub fire in 2003, which was, if you remember back to then, it was a tragic fire that took about, I want to say 100 lives and injured maybe 200 others. But in the wake of this devastating tragedy and continuing to today, the afterlife communications with his son, that's Dave's son, Nicky, they're prolific and they're persistent. And it's also the very thing that has healed Nicky's family and many others who have been graced by Nicky's messages. If you didn't know, there's a documentary film called, is it called 41, Dave? We're going to talk about it. Okay, documentary film. I didn't have the title in my notes here. A documentary film called 41. I've seen it. Misty's seen it. It is amazing. And there's also a book about Nicky's life and death that's been written to tell his story. Also, Nicky himself wrote, before his death, a play actually foreshadowing what was to come. And, you know, no one could have known that, including Nicky at the time. But many of us are just not open or aware of the signs that our departed folks share with us, and that they want to share with us. And Dave shares how he and his family went from grieving to communicating and now to celebrating Nicky's remarkable life. So with that, I bring you Dave Kane. Dave, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you, boy. With an introduction like that, I can't wait to hear what I have to say.
I know, you're going to be great.
I'm so excited. You know, when I first heard about you guys, when you approached me and said Death Chicks wanted to talk about dying, and I thought, well, they must have seen my act, and they wanted to talk about how many times I've died on stage. But I guess not.
No, yeah, you got it. You got it. We want to talk about what has probably shaped so much of your life, and that there's no way you could have known this until this happened. Could you take us back to the fire, to this devastating night?
Sure. Well, Nicky is a performer. Nicky is a writer, a composer, a singer, an actor, a comedian. He's a playwright, as you mentioned. He wrote a play a year before he died called They Walk Among Us. The play is about teenagers who die and come back as angels. And Nicky his band was going to open for Great White, the band Great White, on Friday night at this club, the Station nightclub in West Warwick, Rhode Island. And he went on Thursday night to check out the room, and that's when the fire happened. And Nicky was the youngest victim. There were 100 people who passed, 200 people severely injured, and many more. Everybody crushed emotionally, of course. And And that's how he started. And beginning the day after the fire, I got my first sign. And it was really interesting.
Well, you know, it's hard to believe, and I know that it's been, since 2003, we're, 13 years.
It'll be 14 in February.
And I also want to mention, Dave is just getting over bronchitis, so if you have to go off on a coughing attack, we're going to let you go. We'll let you do that.
I found the mute button for my mic, so I'm
okay. Good. But I didn't want you to worry in case that you needed that. But so 13 years has passed, and I'm sure a very different perspective from the day that happened. Because even though I talk about healing and hope, I don't want people to think that you were just like, oh, okay, well, here we go with the signs. That doesn't mean that there wasn't grief there. And I understand that your wife was particularly haunted by what had happened as well.
Yeah, well, it was obviously the most devastating thing that ever happened in my life. And I can tell you, if you're a parent, it would be for you too. And as I started to say, the beginning of all of this was the very first sign that we got from Nick the day after the fire. And these signs occurred. They started to build and build and build. And for a long time, I just wrote it off to my own grief, to my own imagination, to my own, grasping at something. But then they grew so much that I could no longer ignore them. I couldn't write them off as coincidence or happenstance. And I had to decide that, Nicky was banging on my door and saying, Dad, I'm over here. Come on, let's go. And it's been wonderful. Wonderful.
And I love how, and I don't know if anybody caught it, but you say Nicky is a playwright, a musician. Nicky is, because he may have lost this physical life, but he is alive and well in whatever realm he's dancing around in.
Real, alive and real. He does it all the time. He did it when, well, first of all, I guess I should start with the 41 number. Nicky's favorite number was 41. You get in the car with me, say, Dad, look, it's 241. We see a license plate, Dad, 4141. And we never realized what it was. He couldn't figure out what it was. And then we found out, we looked into numerology, we looked into all these other things, and we couldn't figure out what it was. When Nicky passed, he was 18 and 23 days, 41. The station nightclub is at latitude 41.41. The fire call box of the station is 4414. And on the cover of the book is a picture of Nick from a videotape we found a year after he passed. And in the videotape, his mom is holding him. He's about 4 months old. He has a little baseball uniform on, and the number on the cap is 41. You can see the cover of the book here. And so we realized that this whole 41 thing, and the numbers that all of us have, we have these special numbers, they have a connection to us. And they make us understand that our loved ones are trying to let us know everything's fine. When we think of them, it's because they're thinking of us. So the day after the fire, I got a call. For years, I did talk radio, by the way. People, I know you said, I'm a household name, and everybody knows who I am. But for years, I did talk radio. And I used to have, every once in a while, I have a medium on. They do readings for people. It was really cool. And one of my friends, Cindy Gilman, called me the morning after the fire and said, I heard what happened. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. Well, I was confused because we hadn't told anybody about Nicky yet. It was only the next day. And so I called her and she said, I said, what can I do? She said, well, I just wanted to help out. Maybe I could come on the air and talk to people and try to help them. And then I told her what happened to Nick. And she was shocked. She said, oh, I should have said something. And I said, well, I should have said, and I thought to myself, oh, great. Now I've got a medium that's going to tell me something that she knew something that she didn't really know. And I was not in a good mood that day. And I hung up on her. And after a couple of days, I calmed down a little bit. I called her back to apologize. And she said, no, you've got to hear the story. Now this fire was on television all night. And Cindy stayed up most of the night watching the fire, and then she finally fell asleep. And the next morning she got up. She made herself a cup of tea and sat at her table. And she said that she had a vision of a charred boy who said to her, "Please call my father. Please call my father." And she didn't know who this was. It really shook her up. She didn't know what to do. So she turned to her own phone book and she flipped it open, a private phone book. And she flipped it open to the K's, and my name was the only name on the 2 pages. And she said, "Well, I'll go on Dave Kane's show and I'll talk about this and we'll find out who this boy is." She had no idea the boy was Nicky.
Unbelievable.
And that was the first sign.
At that time, you took it as a sign at that time when you finally heard it a couple of days later, or could really absorb that?
Well, I don't know how much I absorbed it, but I certainly thought, this is amazing. This is astounding. And it was somebody else telling me, not my imagination, it was somebody else telling me the story. And so it was the first time I went, what's here? What is this about?
Wow.
Dave, there was another story you told me linked to 41, and this was connected to your wife's grieving, her just struggling with coming to terms with it. Can you share that with our audience?
Yes, of course. As I said, this was the toughest time in my life. And I remember the morning after the fire, standing in front of a mirror and crying and screaming at myself. "Okay, wise guy, now what do you know? Now you know." You know, I was a talk radio host for 40 years then. I mean, I knew the answers to everything, especially stuff I knew nothing about. You know, I was the man. I was a talk show host. And then I realized how little I knew about anything, of course. But it was worse for Joanne. Nicky's mom could not get over the fear that he suffered in the blaze. She couldn't get over the fact that he may have been in pain. But every medium we went to, let me apologize for my voice again, it's the bronchitis. But every medium that we went to said to us, "No pain." That was the phrase, "no pain." When we asked them, they'd say no pain. When we didn't ask them, they'd say no pain. Well, about 6 years ago, we were tagging a Christmas tree. Nick loved doing that, so we tagged a Christmas tree. And that day, she was in the mode of worrying about Nick. It drove her crazy. And being the kind, gentle, loving husband that I am, I was screaming at her. And I was saying, "What is the matter with you? How many times is this kid going to tell you? I mean, he's Robert Brown, no pain. Cindy Gilman, no pain. Maureen Hancock, no pain, no pain. When are you going to get it? You're driving him crazy. He doesn't want you crying. He doesn't want you sad. He wants you to know that he's okay." So we get in the car and we're going up the hill from the Christmas tree place. And I turn to her and I say, "For God's sake, Joanne, what do you want this kid to do? Put it in writing?" And as soon as I said that, a car coming from the other direction had the vanity plate, "No pain." And we were shocked. We laughed. We cried. That plate is owned by an anesthesiologist.
You tracked it down, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I tracked it down. I made sure. He lived about a mile, not even a mile away from the Christmas tree place. And we called him and asked him permission, and he let us put the picture of the plate in my book. And so that was a huge one for us.
Oh, I can imagine.
How does that happen? How can that possibly be circumstance, happenstance? How can it be just a coincidence? It's impossible.
Well, and it sort of met the bigness of that, sort of met the bigness of the pain and the torture that you guys were going through about what possibly could have happened. So it's like he was ordering this up for you. And, you know, for a newly departed, I don't know how it all works over there, but it sounds like he was working hard to get your attention.
All of the mediums that we have been to have all acknowledged and pointed out that he is one of the strongest spirits they've ever known. And as I started to say, I hope I didn't, even when I was setting up for you guys to be part of this show, Google gave me a code to put in to get a password to be able to talk to you today. And the code number that they gave me was 794841. So Nicky obviously was helping us get together today.
Yeah, he wants us. He wants us to talk.
Yes.
And we had trouble getting you on, and then we also had some trouble before. And this seems. Dave says, "Well, okay, this is it. This is the magic number. This is one's going to work after 20 minutes of troubleshooting." And sure enough, it did. So there's something to that. And
well, Misty, it's funny.
Great.
It's funny that you say that. I want to add to that because as you were going out to create, we were having trouble getting on this one, not just Dave's test run, but as you were going out to create something new, I was like, Dave, can you just talk to Nicky and have him help us figure this out? And boom, we got on. So, you know, some people could chalk all this up to coincidence, but I think what it is, it's the persistency, the frequency that has occurred, and you have so many stories, and we definitely want to hear absolutely more about them. And Misty, I think I interrupted you. You were going to go ask something.
Well, I was curious about, and I think our listeners might be too, about the play that he wrote. And Nicky wasn't, I don't know how his writing skills were, but I do know that he was a kind of boy that didn't do well in school and didn't really fit the norm, and perhaps he certainly had a lot of character and a lot of flair, but he wrote this play and it wasn't discovered until after he died. But I think a few days before he died, his friends and him were hanging out, and he's like, oh yeah, I wrote this play, and they thought it might be a few pages, but it was quite a in-depth, it was a big and spiritual, which was a side that maybe he hadn't shown before. Can you share about that?
Well, first of all, Nicky is brilliant. I mean, brilliant. He wrote plays. He wrote a play. This is a kid that took 4 guitar lessons and wrote 50 songs. This is a kid who has written prose and poetry and amazing things. I mean, and he didn't do well in school because he was too hip for the room, in the sense that it bored him. He didn't fit into the mold, and there were a lot of problems because the teachers did not understand him. One time, a teacher sent a note home because their assignment was to write an essay. And Nicky's was so special that she was convinced that he stole it from somebody. She sent a note home about it. Well, that didn't put me in a good mood, I can tell you. And we went and we had a long conversation with these people that they had no idea who they were dealing with. I mean, now understand, this kid was a funny kid. He went his own way, and there were several times he and I would say, Nick, we have to have a talk, but to challenge him and to say that he had stolen it, rather than discussing with him, and if she thought so, teaching him the word footnote instead of plagiarism, So finally, Nicky, after much consternation on my part, we let him quit high school. And our plan was to get him a GED and then to get him into college and move on. Well, when he went to get his GED, he took the GED test, he needed 1 math class. And he passed everything else. I took him one for his first session for the GED class, the math class, and they canceled it that night. And right after that was the fire. So he never finished. Now, having told you that, I will tell you a story. One night, Cindy Gilman, the woman that I told you about, the medium I told you about, one night the whole family was there. Now, we have a son in New York. We have a son in San Francisco. Well, we actually at the time had 2 sons in New York and a son in San Francisco and, of course, Nick. So we all went, the whole family went to see Cindy, and she was reading the whole family. And Nicky, at one point, Cindy said, who's the fat bald guy? Who's the fat bald guy? And Joanne and I looked at each other and we started to laugh because he used to refer to me as the fat old bald bastard, you know, lovingly, of course. And so he would call me the fat old bald. And that was, you know, it was just a joke. We didn't care. But remember what I just told you about high school. I mean, there was a big, I did not want to let him, I wanted him to graduate. And that was my thing. I finally gave up. But so she said, who's the fat bald guy? So then we had to tell Cindy who the fat bald guy was. And I said, oh, he used to come in. She said, that's real. She said, but why is he showing me himself standing there in a cap and gown? So he was showing me that there are other ways to graduate, Dad. And I got to tell you, it was.
That's brilliant.
There you go. Well, and death and leaving this physical life, for those who are willing to look at that way, could be a graduation.
Yes.
Not everybody looks at it that way. And, you know, we're so embroiled in this kind of Western view of what death is all about. And no doubt it's, you know, all tied up with grief and mourning as it should be, so that we can find our way through. But you know, there's also a release that I don't think most of us think about for the person who has passed.
Sure. Well, before he passed, Nicky had just said to his girlfriend, Gabby, he said, and I don't know what they were talking about, but he had told the kids, when I die, don't wear black. Wear colors.
Wear colors.
By the way, he gave his guitar to Gabby 2 days before the fire.
Really?
He just gave his guitar to her.
So,
and it's like he knew, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
There was a lot of little signs.
Yeah. Oh, many. Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
Misty, you were talking.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, Misty was asking you about the play. Tell us about what the play is about. And
well, the play is about. It's so strange. The play is about 3 teenagers who have passed, and they come back, and it opens up on a New York City street, and they're in, and their mission is to help a young man who is struggling with his sexuality, struggling with being gay. And so their job is to try to get him through that. And Nicky wrote, of course, he wrote the lead for himself, you know, and Gabby played Grace the angel, one of the other angels, and her brother played Levi, another angel. And we put on the play first one time for a night of angels to celebrate Nick, and Nicky's brother Chris directed the play. His brother Billy came in from San Francisco to sing. His brother David played the part that Nicky wrote for himself, and his friends filled the rest of the cast. And so this whole play is about them helping this young man realize that God loves him no matter what. That was Nicky. He wanted that message out. And it's terrific. I mean, he wrote it when he was 16. And when you see it, you can't believe it. Now, there's another story to this that seldom gets told. But the girl angel is named Grace. And in the copy, you realize, in the script, you realize that she has passed very young. And there's a scene where they're all sitting around a table in a diner. And Grace, the angel, says, I would want to know why my sister died. I would want to know why she was taken so young, etc. Well, a friend of Nicky's sister named Grace, shortly after that play was written, passed suddenly. Wow. And it was like prophetic. It was like Nicky had known it. And we didn't, as you say, we didn't find the play itself until after Nicky died.
Wow. So your feeling about all this was that this was, and I don't want to say this was supposed to happen, because we wish it didn't happen to you, and we wish Nicky was still here. But tell us what you feel, the reason this all did happen, and what he's doing by having done this.
Yeah, when I say it was supposed to happen, people say to me all the time, he died too young. Well, if we get to choose, my kid goes, 5 minutes after I do, not a second before. But we don't get that choice. And we have to realize that there is a reason. We don't understand it. But when you realize it, and Joanne and I have done so much talking about this and so much praying, we believe that this boy died exactly when he was supposed to, and exactly the way he was supposed to, and in the place he was supposed to. There was a lot of controversy about this fire for years. I got involved with the FBI and with a whole bunch of other stuff, trying to get justice for these people. But Nicky's job, he wrote this beautiful play. He wrote all these great songs. I mean, you would not, this kid was writing these songs when he was, again, 16, 17. He rhymed Texaco and Mexico. He didn't know what Mexico was, he was, and
he was prolific. He was prolific with his work, and you can see that in the movie, where much of his work is featured. It's like I think some people come into this world as an old soul, a middle soul, a new soul, whatever it happened to be. But it seemed like he had a lot to say. And I'm particularly struck by the fact that here the fire was 16 years ago. 2 years before that, you're saying he wrote was it 13 years? I'm sorry. So then 15 years ago, he was writing about what is happening today in the world in terms of, marginalized populations, taking care of people, people who are finding them, needing support coming out. And that's pretty amazing for a young kid 15 years ago to be talking about.
He always stuck up for kids. He was always somebody to speak up. And it was so interesting to see. And when you see this play, everybody in the play, or a lot of the scenes in the play, are about the people he knew and about his own experiences and his own vision of it. They do a scene in the restaurant where he gives the waitress not a hard time. He flirts with the waitress. I don't know if you remember that. And he flirts with the waitress, and he does this whole thing. And the whole thing is dissing me, because every time we'd go into a restaurant, the waitress would say to us, "Are you ready to order?" And I'd always say, No, we're ready to request. We don't like to be too pushy, And after, when she walked away, Nick would say, "Do you have to say that every time?" And things like that. And they showed up in the play, and I had no idea they showed up in the play. It was cool.
You never know the impact that you have on another until you see those words back at you when you least expect them, correct?
Yeah, it's really funny. It's great.
I'm curious, your other son, who for whatever reason felt a calling to video Nicky from pretty much the day he was born. I'm struck by how they seem to be just kind of wedded at the hip there, and how he was able to manage this tragedy, the different people in your family, how they've come to.
Yeah, it was terrible for Chris. Yeah, it was terrible for Chris. Chris was the oldest, and Nicky is the youngest, 10 years apart, and as you say, joined at the heart. And Chris's job, for Chris, he was obsessed with videotaping Nicky everywhere. In the house, in the backyard, in the car, on stage, in the bathroom. Don't ask. And it was, we didn't know why. Well, now we know why, because we had this award-winning documentary called 41. And in it, you see Nicky from the time he's wearing that 41 on his cap to moments before he passes, because we have the footage of the fire from 60 minutes. Yeah. So now why he was obsessed with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that movie, those clips, the home videos in the movie 41, which is available. I watched it. I streamed it on Gaiam TV, Gaiam.
How'd you like
and
it?
you can order it. Great.
How'd you
Yeah,
like
I didn't. It was fabulous, and my internet cut out near the end, so I'm going to have to try another day to catch the end of it. But the home videos from the beginning, like you said, of Nicky at every age were just brilliant. It just captured the essence of his life at home, his joie de vivre, his how much he gave, and the productions, the theatrical productions, and the singing he did as a youngster was amazing. And just the fact that his brother videoed all this, and how in hindsight it seems to all come together. And this reminds me of other guests who share the same message, and that's that we choose the lives we lead, and if we choose to come and go early, we sign up for that. So your son's story, and his a little bit of premonition almost before he went.
Yeah, great
speak
deal.
loudly
Great
to
deal of
that.
premonition, unfortunately. I mean, I don't know. I worry about how concerned he was. You know, he did get a bit sullen near the end, and that bothers me when I think about it. You know, because he knew something was up, and he didn't know what, I'm sure. And so that's something to think of. The best part of my favorite part of the movie is when Nicky's asking to stay up late, and he and his mother sing back and forth to each other.
Yeah, I think
was
that's my
fun.
favorite part too. And I was watching it in bed, and I was sharing the doubled bed with my daughter, and I was watching, and that's the part she woke up in. She had fallen asleep, and I was watching it, and she woke up during that part, and I thought, what a great part to wake up in, because it's so fun. It's just really captures the musicality and the liveliness of the household, and the brilliant part, like you said, you could tell a little bit before the fire that maybe he sensed something was up. We can never know. But what I find really interesting about your story is that your hindsight and seeing how all these little pieces fit together, and even you yourself said that you thought all these years in talk radio were preparing you for something. You had no idea it was this, but in hindsight we can see, and I guess my hope is that our viewers will come to maybe take something home from this that allows them to look differently at life and loss, and how it's part of a bigger plan that we as humans on earth, we can't see and we can't know, but that shift into trust, and that all is happening for a reason. That's the part of your story that speaks loudly to me.
Yeah, well, Joanne said to me one day, you know, all of the years that I spent on stage and on television and on radio and doing commercials and all of those things, I thought I was, you know, well, I'm going to be, you know, well, this is what I'm going to do, never realizing that as you mentioned, I was being trained to be able to tell Nicky's story so that people will be able to be touched by it, so that they will get what he wants them to get. He wants them to get the peace of understanding that everything is fine. At the end of his play, Grace the angel says to the boy they're trying to help, in the end, everything, and I do mean everything, is going to be just fine. And the final line in the play is, do not fear to hope. So we put that on his headstone. And we're trying to tell everybody what my son wants me to tell everybody, that there's nothing to fear.
A beautiful message that it seems hard for others who have not been where you've been to get. But once they've been where you've been, it seems like the only logical thing. You know, if you were to tell somebody where death is so far away and so remote from their everyday world and they haven't been touched by it, it just seems like, yeah. But when you've been through what you've been through, it's everything. In fact, I'm curious about what for you, you mentioned when you looked in the mirror and you yelled at yourself and you thought, well, I'm such a big shot, what about now?
Yeah.
Would you say for you, the biggest change for you in your life, your personality, did it open you? How did it change you?
Well, it was kind of the stuff I said about I knew everything, and that's tongue in cheek on my part. I knew I didn't know everything, but the people around you tell you that you know everything. You know, the people around you. Oh, I listen to you every day, and da da da. And, you know, so you have to really guard yourself against that, because you could become. But I was kind of angry at the image that I had of myself, as far as what that other people have of you. You know that you're on television, or you're this, you're that, and so you're somebody special or whatever. And I always try to talk people out of that,
Mm-hmm.
But I was so angry about things that I couldn't understand. I wasn't angry at God or anything like that. I was just so frustrated that I couldn't understand what happened,
Right.
and why I was suddenly here, and why my Joanne had to deal with this.
Right. Right.
It was very hard.
I bet you it was.
And I had to figure out what my job was going to be now, because I had to make sure she was okay. And Nicky swooped right in and made sure that I had his support. And we got together and we made this thing. We survived it. And he wanted us to know so badly that everything is okay, that he's right here. And he's done it in so many ways. It's unbelievable. I mean, the book is a thin book. It's just examples. And people have asked me to write another book, but it would be the same, just another story of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, this book gives the premise. This gives the example. There are thousands of other things that I could have put in that book. This thing could have been like an encyclopedia.
You share, and you can kind of hear it on one of the recordings that I saw, that there was also an audio recording of Nicky's voice. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, that had to be shocking.
Again, I may apologize for my voice. These are called EVPs. EVPs are electronic voice phenomena. And what happens is people who have passed, the voices of people who have passed, show up on recordings today. There are people all over the country, all over the world, who collect these. You put a tape recorder or a digital recorder in a room, and you record, and you ask people to come to talk. You ask them questions, and you just let the recorder run. When you play the recording back, there are voices on the tape. There are people saying things. Now, there's a whole controversy about whether you can understand it, whether, the people who do this all the time are better at picking it up. And so I believe in this, but personally, we had a couple of things. Joanne went to see Maureen Hancock. She's out of Massachusetts. Wonderful woman. And she went to see her, and she said to Joanne, "Does Nicky ever call you?" She said, "Well, sometimes in the house, I think I hear." She said, "Well, this time he's telling me he's going to call you, and when he does, there'll be no mistaking it." And when we got back home, Chris, the oldest boy, he's our investigator. He listened to every minute of that tape, and right at the point where Maureen says that, their little boy's voice says, "Mommy," clear as day. Now, we have so much videotape of Nicky, we can find the year that voice matches that boy. But that isn't the story. Here's the story. A woman contacted me via email after this story it was written up in a journal of people that do this. It's an EVP journal of some kind. And a woman contacted me from Southern California. And she said, "Mr. Kane, your son is sending me EVPs." And my immediate response was, "Nutburger, here we go. Here I go. I got somebody who doesn't know me, doesn't know Nick. All of a sudden, he's calling her."
Nutburger, that's funny.
That was my response. Now, understand, I believe in this stuff, but like my father says, trust everybody, but cut the cards, right? So
Yes.
she sent us a couple of EVPs. And we couldn't really figure them out too good. I mean, we could hear it kind of, in one, it said Joe's Nick's mom. Joanne is Nick's mom. Joe's Nick's mom.
Mm-hmm.
Then on a Sunday morning, and I will never forget this, I get up early. I get up before Joe does, and I got up early, and it was another EVP from this woman, and she said, "Please tell me if this is your son." So I click on the EVP, and the voice is absolutely Nicky's voice. It is absolutely his voice. And he says, "Mom and Dad, this is Nick." Now, the people who do this are stunned at this. The people who know about it cannot get over how powerful this is. Because most of these EVPs, they don't identify themselves. They'll say something, or they'll say a phrase. Maybe the person who hears it will understand the connection.
Right, right.
Here's Nicky saying, "Mom and Dad, this is Nick." It's astounding.
Well, there's some school of thought that talks about the kind of the vibration or the frequency of a spirit in life carries over to in death. And when you see from the movie 41, you see the vibrancy of your son, and you see the lives he touched, and the pure spirit that he was in this life. It makes sense that he would come across very, very strongly, from these after-death communications. And, what would you say to, I'm sure some people look at this, and some people might be just rolling their eyeballs or crossing their arms.
This poor guy, he's around the boy. This is terrible. You put him
a nutball.
Really?
A nut burger. He's a nut burger.
Something wrong with this boy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know.
It's unbelievable unless you've been there. And but I think it's like this, where it's like when we're open to things, we see things. When we're not open to things, we don't see things. It feels as simple as that. I mean, It doesn't even have to be in death. It's in life when we want to learn something. If we're like, I'm not going to learn it, we're really constricted, we're not going to see it. But what are we other than spirit?
That's exactly right. And, the stuff that Nicky has done, and the stuff that we have been exposed to, and the stuff I've written about, the things you see in 41, you realize that there can be, no pain alone is the first big sign that we got. We went to see Robert Brown, the medium, Robert Brown. He's from England, okay? And my wife read his book, We Are Eternal, and she wanted to get a meeting with him. So she wrote him a letter. And a few days later, we got a call from his assistant. He was coming to New York the first weekend in October, and he was going to give us an appointment, which was great, except the first weekend in September, I had 2 heart attacks and quadruple bypass surgery. So 4 weeks later, I'm on a train going to New York. And that wasn't the worst part. I got to tell you this. That wasn't the worst part. The worst part was we get on the train, and my wife says to the conductor, "Can we get 2 seats together? Because he just had open heart surgery." And he said, "You had open heart surgery?" "I had open heart surgery." I said, "Great." He said, "How you doing?" I said, "Terrific." He said, "No." He said, "You getting exercise?" I said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "Are you eating good?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Have you had the depression yet?" And I said, No. He said, "Good, you shouldn't." He said, "You got a lot to live for." And he pointed at Joanne. He said, "You got a lovely daughter."
There's the depression.
Yeah, exactly. It kicked in.
That's great.
Yeah. So
oh, go ahead.
So we go to see Robert Brown. He tells us stuff he couldn't know. He tells us stuff we couldn't know. We found out later the stuff he had said was accurate, because he told us where Nicky was standing at that night. Okay. And in the videotape, you see exactly where he was, exactly where he said. He told us Nicky stopped and tried to help a woman who had thrown herself on the floor. He tried to pick her up. She had panicked. A woman 3 years later came up to me and told me the same story. She had survived the fire, and she came up and told me the same story.
Wow.
But at the end of the session, Robert Brown said to us, your son wants me to tell you one more thing. He wants me to tell you that the show must go on. Now, what he couldn't possibly know is that those were the very last words Nicky spoke to me. It was the night before the fire. He was going on to Great White to see Thursday, and I found out he was gonna open for them on Friday night, and I found out he wasn't getting much money for the gig, and our whole family's in show business, and I was teasing him, Nick, show business, if you do it for free, they'll let you, Yeah, Dad, I know, rolling his eyes. And when he got to his girlfriend's house, I said, honey, I didn't mean to pick on you, but I don't know why you'd sell God's talent so short. And he gave me a hug and a kiss. He said, Dad, because the show must go on. And he got out of the car.
And those were the last words.
And Robert Brown told us the words. And we went to the Stage Door Deli and ate like a couple of pigs. We were laughing. I never chewed and cried. I was chewing and crying at the same time. It was amazing. It was amazing. Really terrific.
Oh.
Now, can I just mention one thing about people that look at us and don't get it? Two things I want to say. I'm just telling my story. I'm just telling Nick's story. I'm just letting you hear it and decide for yourself. If I invite you to my house for a Christmas party, and I tell you the buffet is in the dining room, if you don't go in the dining room, that's not my fault. It's right here for you. You decide what you want. You can pick what you want, or you can be a vegetarian. I don't know, whatever. Right? So that's the first thing. I'm going to tell you, and then instead of wasting your time thinking I'm a nutburger and need some help, why don't you say, well, maybe this guy's got something here. Maybe there's something for me here. And that's all. Now, the other thing is, it's very tough to get guys on board for this stuff.
Yeah. Why? I wonder why that is. I guess they're, very literal, logical, linear.
Well, I have a theory about that. And I call it the Santa syndrome.
Okay.
We're brought up to believe in Santa. And then we're told, by the way, we're brought up to believe in the Tooth Fairy. Not so much. We're brought up about the Easter Bunny.
Yeah.
Well, listen, okay. And what happens is these guys would like it to be true. Who would not want this to be true?
Right.
But they are so afraid of being disappointed again. They are so afraid that Lucy is going to move that football. And they don't want to look foolish. They don't want to have their heart broken. So they macho up and say, oh, I don't believe in this stuff and that can't be, and blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
And I think that's what really stops them from being open to it.
I think that makes, a lot of sense.
That's really spoken from the male perspective. I've never heard it explained like that before, but as the traditional, inbred genes of protector and provider, to present or accept something like that without having proof. I mean, if you got let down, you'd be letting down your family or your, so I get that. And that's a really well explained. That's an interesting theory.
And then
I agree.
There's a dash of dumb in there, because if I don't understand it, it can't be. It's one of the stupidest concepts I've ever heard.
A dash of dumb.
You want to go sit I tell you, you go sit in the auditorium, you watch David Copperfield and tell me how he did it,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how they do this stuff. Nicky, the other day, my son David always busts me because he says, the other day, Dad, that was 4 years ago. Right?
Time flies when you're having fun and getting old. So
Joanne was coming home and they had one of those portable radar units out that shows you how fast you're going. She was right behind the car on our street. He went by, she was right behind him. He went by 26. She went by 41. There it is. Take it or leave it. Believe it or not. What can I tell you? She came home and we had a wonderful laugh on it.
Well, and gosh, I mean, to be open to it. I mean, you can choose no, but then you're fighting against this evidence. Well, this what seems like evidence. You're fighting against these signs to make them not true. A, that's no fun. B, it doesn't connect you anymore. In fact, it disconnects you from your loved one who's passed. So to me, it's like, believe it or not, true or not, why not go there and have fun with it?
Exactly. And why do that to yourself? You know, if I'm wrong about this and you're right, the skeptic is right.
Yeah.
When they die, they're not going to know it because they're going to be dead in the ground and it won't make any difference.
Right.
But if I'm right and they're wrong and they go through their life without hope, without belief, without an opportunity, they're going to step over the line. And when they go on the other side, they're going to turn around. They're going to go, oh my God, Kane was right. Yeah. And this whole time, I could have avoided the sadness. I could have avoided the pain. I could have avoided the feeling of being terribly done in. I could have avoided the anger over the unfairness of it. And when we step over and go, oh, of course. And that's what I want people to do. I want people to say, look, maybe this is baloney. And if I'm full of it and you buy on board, at least whatever time we got left, you're going to feel better.
Yeah, right. And isn't that what it's about?
Nice.
Everything we do in life is to feel better. Every single thing, from what we eat to what we look at on TV, everything is made to feel better. So why not this?
And our loved ones are tap dancing as fast as they can. They're sending coins and music and feathers and coincidences. And I mean, good Lord, so many ways. I got a story.
Yeah. And you know.
Okay.
Oh
no, that's
sorry. Okay. I was just gonna say my iTunes does this to me, and I don't really know how it works, but I'll put one song on, and then the next song it plays randomly. I have no idea how it picks it, but how many times is that song just what I need to hear? And I don't have it set up, or I don't know how it picks them, but there's something going on there. So
yeah.
I appreciate that. And Dave, I love the way your perspective on things. I like how you're inviting the skeptics in, and I mean it's a great perspective. And why not choose this? And we're getting to the top of the hour here. Did you have one more story? If you do, just go ahead and share it. And then please how we can get in touch with you and get your book and get your.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, you can just simply go to davekane.net. DaveKane.net. Simple. Okay, this story real fast. Susan Apollon was a co-writer of the book Life After Life, the second edition of Life After Life. She's been a guest on my radio show several times. And she wrote her own book recently, and she wrote about Nicky in the book. Well, she is not just an intuitive, she is also a psychologist. And a couple came to her as a psychologist because their marriage was in great trouble because their son had committed suicide. And it really drove them crazy. Well, during the sessions, at one point, the father says that he thinks his boy is sending him signs. Now, he doesn't buy into this stuff or anything, but he just can't, he's getting a little nutso. And he's wondering if this is just him and so Susan starts to say to him, well, you should talk to my friend Dave Kane because his son, but he shuts her off. She can't get through. I mean, in no details. A few weeks later, a month later, whatever, they go to a medium in Philadelphia. And the medium kicks them down the stairs. I mean, this kid comes through like gangbusters. I mean, he's giving social security numbers. He's giving, he's going crazy. And so they have this great session. And at the end of the session, the medium says, there's a young man with your son who helped him come through. And the young man's name is Nickolas. Well, they don't know what that is because Susan didn't get that far. So they go back to Susan and they tell the story. And then they mention the Nickolas. And she said, my God, that's the kid I was telling you about. So now the father calls me. He makes a terrible mistake of calling me because now he's, I hope he packed a lunch because I'm gonna be all over, right?
He's going to the buffet in the dining room for sure.
I'm all over trying to validate his boy for him. And we have a great talk, like an hour or something, and we finish. Joanne comes home, and I say to Joanne, boy, this was an interesting talk, blah, blah, blah. And I said, and for some reason, I remembered the guy's name. The guy's name was Eric Stark. She said, oh, wow, that's weird. I said, why? She said, my last dream before I woke up this morning was about Anya. Now, Anya was a little girl that Joanne had in daycare when she ran a daycare. And I used to see Anya and I'd say, oh, don't get any Anya, right? Her last name was Stark. Her father's name was Eric. So this was Nicky letting his mom know that he was the Nickolas in that reading.
Wow.
It's
just, it's almost sometimes so much to take in. You know what I mean? It's just unbelievable.
It is.
What would you, as we wrap up here, and I know this past week, I guess you heard the news that there were a couple of fires that took place and that claimed many lives, not as many as the station nightclub fire. And it was a particularly odd week for me because we had some friends two friends who are both firefighters, paramedics. And I mentioned we were going to be talking to you. And I said, did you ever hear about the station nightclub fire? And this guy's in Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas. And I don't know if you know, but it's what is studied all over the country. Station nightclub fire is studied by firefighters.
Yes.
A lot.
Yes.
And so when the two of them, but one stayed longer when our one friend was in. And then, these fires took place. It was kind of like unbelievable that this was happening at the time we were going to be interviewing you. But I did want to ask, what would you say to people who are now in the aftermath, right, the next couple days of these fires, and how would you comfort them? What would you share?
Now's not the time to be able to speak to them. They
Okay.
need to go through their own grief. Everybody, with all of this, remember, we had our own grief.
Yeah.
We had our own time to be sad, our own time to be sorrowful and cry. And after that, they need to be calm and open themselves. Listen. Don't push off what they think is a coincidence. If something makes them think of their loved one, it's because their loved one is thinking of them. And they need to be open to it, relax, and accept it. Speak out loud to your loved one. We have a party every year. We have Nicky's party. The whole family comes. We have a medium come, and we celebrate, and we sing happy birthday, and we have a cake. And we don't let Nicky go. Open yourselves. We are the ones that have our backs turned. We are the ones, you see two women in a supermarket and they're talking to each other. And one of them has a little girl or a little boy and she's pulling at the skirt. Mommy, yeah, just a minute. Mommy, yeah, just mom, in a minute. But and while and the woman is saying, gee, I really miss my daughter who passed. And the daughter is right there going, mommy. We have to be open to it. We have to put away our own anger and our own fear and listen to our child. Just as you would never leave them, they're never leaving you. They'll be
wonderful. I think that's very well said. And on that note, it is at the top of the hour. So, gosh, Misty, anything else for David? His voice is held out.
Yeah, you have one of those wonderful radio voices, bronchitis or no. It's a lovely voice and lovely stories, and this it's kind of what we're about, Patty. It's kind of what the Death Chicks are about. It's bringing the stories like this into the public so that others can hear and learn. And we're not trying to push anything. We're just putting the stories out there. And these things are happening more and more these days. It's getting out there. And there's change happening. There's a shift that's going on. And we're happy to be part of it. And we're really happy to have had you here, Dave. And
well, thanks for inviting me. I have a great time. Anytime I can sit and brag about my son is a good day. So
well, he is, and he's braggable. Let me tell you, he was a good-looking boy, and I'm sure if I were his age, he was like the bad boy that I would have been interested in. So watch out.
He was a good bad boy. He was a good.
That's what I mean, a good bad boy. You know what I mean?
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, David.
I'm sure we'll be talking again real soon.
Okay,
And everyone else, we'll see you in a couple of weeks, and we'll be wrapping up our grief series. And you can tell, even when we're talking about a grief series, we laugh, we love, and we enjoy. So have a good couple of weeks, everybody. Dave's leaving.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.